Anybody feel called to do the drop-in, or do we want to all just participate?
I'm good with just like showing up whenever it's like, speak now.
Okay.
That feels good to you all.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm happy to start. Just feels like taking a moment to just each be silent for a little bit and just kind of connect into ourselves for a few moments, just feeling your body, feeling your feet on the floor, and noticing your breath, and just letting yourself really arrive here into this conversation. Just making whatever physical adjustments you may need to make to really arrive fully. I feel like I just want to acknowledge that the silence feels really important. The slowness feels really important. As with each breath, we let ourselves drop even more deeply and more fully into our bodies, especially our lower bodies, our pelvis, that throne, if you will, that seat. Just allowing yourself to drop and be really held and supported by the chair or whatever surface you're sitting on. Just feel how it's holding you completely. It's got you. And you can surrender to its support. And as we take a moment now to connect in with each other, with the three of us here, and anybody else who may be listening, allowing ourselves to feel each other, notice each other, coming together here with intention, with purpose. Feeling that tug of our hearts being pulled forward by this conversation. Knowing that we're here as representatives of the consciousness of this transformation, this shift that's happening, of which we are part. Allowing that consciousness, that non-physical energy, that bigger, broader consciousness that knows that healing is not only possible, but already happening. And we are part of that. These conversations that we have and that we will continue to have are part of that. Each person listening to them is part of that. So allowing that consciousness to really come in fully, recognizing your unique energetic signature as it comes in. Knowing how trustworthy it is. Just allowing yourself to experience the love that's there. Allowing that love to really come in through your heart, circulate through your body, feeling the beauty of the love and of the impulse to have these conversations that are in service to the healing of all. To the repair of that which has been broken. It's the power of that love that guides these conversations and that nudges us forward to continue having them despite the discomfort, despite the squirminess, the pukiness that comes up. Because the truth is that we all know that we are so much greater than this wounding, and that we're here to heal that which is ready to be healed so that we can live the fullness of the humanity that we are in deep connection with each other without any of these false separations that have been programmed into us, that have been taught to us for eons. We're here to break free of them so that we can see each other clearly through the eyes of love. And if either of you have anything to add, I feel complete right at this moment. I could bring us into our conversation unless either of you has something to add.
Just present that weaving that we all did together, just really calling that into the now and just letting that hold us and hold this space and hold this conversation.
And may this be a time of deep healing for ourselves, for the collective, for anyone who listens to this call and any other calls that come through, where sometimes it can be like that quiet nudge. Sometimes it can be that like getting hit in the head by a 2x4 where you're like, oh God, I didn't realize that was happening. And but all the different ways that spirit can flow through us, can use us, can make use of our skills, our gifts, our ability to get ourselves out of the way and let it work through us. It's that ego step aside, goddess, let's fucking bring it energy that I'm inviting into the space as well, with deep and profound gratitude to each of you and our higher selves and every other bit of orchestration that has been, speaking of those coincidences, that has happened on behalf of anyone whom will ever be touched and impacted by this work that we're here to bring forth. Just profound gratitude for all of it.
Beautiful. So now we step fully into this conversation in this virtual space. As you feel ready, just really feel your body in the chair, in the room, online here. And as you feel ready, allow your eyes to flicker open and just look around your space, sort of orienting to where you are. And then when you're ready, look at your screen and we'll come into space together. And so it was this beautiful silence after that, right? Where it's just like, yeah. Yeah, I love that you brought in the Kristen. I love what you brought in too, Clarissa, but the conversation we were having, before we started recording, um, and how vital that is to this conversation. I think we should recap that on the recording, don't you think? Is it possible to recap such a conversation? The theme was victimhood, victimization, and how the patriarchy has taken away any version of womanhood, of femaleness, that's not like the damsel in distress, right? Or the princess in need of rescue. Yeah. We were talking about how we sort of navigate that dance of being the hero of our journeys, of our stories, without going into that hyper individualization that is also part of the programming, right?
Yeah, and I know for me too, it's never easy to admit that we've been walking a path of the victim, or like embodying victimhood, or giving our power away, or any of that, right? Like, my self perception is strong warrior woman, empowered, and yet, right, like, there are many ways that I approach life from more of that subservient, like, victim place, right? Um, and there's a part of me, right, that like goes into maybe like self-judgment, like feeling ashamed of that, right? And then there's the other part of me that's like, wait a second, like, is this the programming, right? Is this the programming? Because the programming actually wants me to be a victim, right? Like, it, like, it doesn't, like, being, how do I want to say it? Like, people who do not perceive themselves as victims are not easy to manipulate and control, and therefore, right, like, can be threatening in a society that sees power as having control, that functions in a way of, how do I try to say this, like, yeah, that sees security as having control over the space, right? Like, we get safety and security by exerting control, and yet I think a lot of us don't want to be controlled. We want to be free.
Yeah, and that piece about when we were talking about leadership, right? Like people that are, you were sharing about the books you're reading, Kristen, about the Wheel of Time, right? And the character that like didn't want to admit he was a leader. And I was realizing, like, I think most of us, I know for me, like when I've any examples of leadership I've had through my life, not currently, because I have beautiful examples of really healthy leadership now, I think, but mostly my life, like leadership has gone along with like manipulation and abusive behavior and coercion and power over and all of that stuff, right? So even the whole concept of leadership and claiming our leadership, it kind of reminds me of marketing. You know how like when you have a business, like marketing has become a dirty word. It's like, well, marketing, it's really, marketing is just letting people know you exist and what you do. But and with leadership, like even that, to me, yeah, I'm realizing leadership has equaled manipulation or something. Hasn't been trustworthy. So I think that's part of what we're doing too, is um, learning a new way of leadership, which is not ego-driven leadership, but is spirit-driven leadership, right? Yeah.
Well, and it's also like learning a new way to feel powerful that doesn't involve disempowering others, powering over people, right? Like consensual leadership isn't something that we really know. We don't have a lot of experience with like that kind of like humble, consensual leadership, right? Like more often than not, like leadership is authoritarian, like you do what I say, like,
Yeah.
and even as far as that saying of you do what I say, not what I do, right? Like the leaders don't even need to embody what they're enforcing, right? They just become an enforcer, right? And like that piece, I know for myself, like has made it difficult for me to like claim my power, step into leadership, right? Because like I don't want to lead like that. So then what does it look like to lead in a different way?
Yeah.
And the structures have been set up such that the nervous systems of everybody else are so deeply trained to stay in your little box that it's only safe to stay here. Because what happens if you start to step out of the box? And Babs, you told this really heartbreaking story earlier in this call before we came on when we were anchoring this in of if you'd like to just share that.
Yeah. I mean, that whole thing about stepping out of the box, right? This is a very literal example of it, of blanket training, which was, I had never heard that term before, but apparently there are books about it on Amazon that you can buy. Um, but it's a type of training that these high control, the woman I heard talking about it was formerly part of a high control, very controlling Christian evangelical community. Um, and she was taught as a new mother by the elder women in the church, one woman in particular who like was held in high esteem by everyone because she was such a good mother, had the 10 kids and they all walked like little ducklings behind her, and everybody was like, wow, how are they so well behaved? And so she taught this blanket training, and what they do is they take the little kids when they're before they can move. So she mentioned 4 months old, and this woman did this with her children because she wanted, and this is the thing that was so impactful for me. It's coming from a well-intentioned place because these women, like, they want to be good mothers. They want their children to be safe. They want their children to be okay. So they're trying to figure it out, and they're in this situation where they're like, okay, here's what you have to do. So they're taught to how to pick out the correct switches, how to have a selection of switches to use, or little whips, right? And put the baby on the blanket. And if the baby moves outside of that blanket at all, you hit them, you whip them. And so that whole concept of not stepping outside the box, it's very literal in that sense. And then it evolves with the child when they're able to actually get off a blanket. Now they're hit if they say the wrong thing, think the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, all the way up to marriage. This woman was talking about her husband would spank her, and that she was so humiliated that she swore to never tell anyone. But if she dared to have a thought that was independent, that was her own, he would spank her.
And I think it's really important to note that like it's a good example because it kind of puts that in frame of how we've all been trained, but it's really easy to look at that very extreme example and go, oh, well, that didn't happen to me. That's not me.
Right.
That wasn't my family. That wasn't my society. We don't actually do that here. That's just like a cult type of behavior.
Yeah.
But there have been ways throughout history that's been programmed into our DNA through our ancestry to absolutely keep us in line. And whether it is a real threat to our physical bodies in this lifetime, or whether it's just that indoctrinated, if I step out of line, I will be punished, or I'll be hurt, or worse, that is running full time through most of our nervous systems. And that is keeping us from stepping into our leadership because it's not safe. It's not perceived as safe.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, that example, like you said, Clarissa, it's like, that's an extreme. And yet, right, like that sort of thing happens all the time, right? Like in schools, sit still. You know what I mean? Like, it's like all the time. Like even little things like having to get permission to go to the bathroom, having to get, you know what I mean? Where it's like we are overriding our impulses to wait for permission, right? Like to wait to be given permission, right? And the other piece that I really think is poignant of that too is like, okay, yes, that's actually happening to people in real life right now. Yes, that's been happening, right? And also, like, the threat of that happening is enough to keep us in line as well, right? Like, I don't actually need to be spanked to have the threat of that spanking keep me in line, right?
Right.
Like, that's how our culture works in general, right? It's like the fear of the punishment is what keeps us towing the line, doing what we're told, acting in the way that we've been told is the normal way to act. Like, that's a very common practice within our culture. Like, it's like, it didn't happen at my school, but like, my mom has stories about like being hit with rulers by teachers and that kind of like physical threat to your body because what, like, you answered a question wrong, like that is a very real part of our world, whether or not it's that extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're right, the threat of it, where it could happen if you step out of line, you could be hurt. Like I know that impacted me, as a gay person. I grew up in the 70s, right, and 80s. Like that was before there was any celebrities that were gay that were out, and so you would hear these stories about gay bashings, about, all the things, and you just knew like, oh my God, like that could be right around the corner if I, God forbid, I should look like I want to, and having short hair, and not dressing like a girl should dress or whatever. Do you know that in my lifetime I had to wear dresses to school until I was in 5th grade. Then I could wear pants if I wanted to. That's when it changed. My
Wow.
lifetime. It was mandated to wear a dress if you were a girl. And that kind of thing is still happening, right? Like kids of color can't have their hair the way that
My
they.
graduation, we had traditionally at the high school I graduated from, we didn't do cap and gown. Women wore white dresses and men wore suits. The year I graduated, one of the women wanted to wear a white pantsuit and they didn't let her walk. I'm pretty sure it's changed, but like they refused to let her walk because she wouldn't wear a dress. And that was in 2010. Was that 2010? No, 2006. But like, regardless,
Not that
it's like,
far.
that's not
Mm.
like, and to me, all like what this, is really speaking to is like the nefarious ways in which like we are programmed to act in a particular way without even realizing that we've been programmed to
Yeah.
act in that way, right?
Yes.
Like, women just do this. Do they? Do all women just wear dresses? That's just what women do? Or is that something we've decided that women have to do for some reason, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's really interesting because I was actually having a conversation like with similar threads of this, of like, the way in which like enforcing women are this way is so important in a culture that has others, right? Right? That wants to differentiate, like, this is the good kind of woman, this is the bad kind of woman, right? Like, I mean, I even think of like within whiteness, right? Like, this is how white people act, this is how not white people act. If you want to be treated like white people, you better act like this. You better be quiet, you better have manners, you better talk proper, you better, whatever it is, whatever. And like, when we see someone not, look, this is how we like differentiate ourselves from others, feel better than others. Like, oh, those people are being loud. Oh, look at her, she doesn't shave. Oh, she doesn't wear makeup, right? Like, it's a way for us to like feel more womanly, more worthy. Like,
Yeah.
it
And
is like,
we're taught to judge each other and ourselves so harshly that we will stay inside of the confines of our safety because we'll keep each other in check through that threat of harm. Whether it's in our own brains or whether it's a very real physical threat. And I just to bring this even more expanded into the context of our podcast, this is the experience as 3 white women speaking to this. And it is so much more severe, I imagine, I've learned, for people of color who are in that place of the scrutiny is that much more profound, the risks are that much more harsh. And so there, it's one of the reasons why we talked a lot in our training together of the need for white women to speak up, because we have been taught for so long to toe the line and trained for so long to toe the line. But it's safer for us to speak up and to start changing things at our level in our demographic than it is for people of color to do the same. Not to mention it's like not their work because they didn't really create the problem.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think I love that, what you just said. And I think about the phrase I often use, like with my clients and things, I've always been like, well, we all come by our stuff honestly, right? And even that story I was sharing earlier, it's like such an extreme thing that I could easily find myself going, doing the othering, like, oh my God, they're horrible. They treat their kids that way, like as if they're different than me. But they came by their stuff on very honestly, right? And it's the programming. They were programmed that particular way very effectively, right? So that's why I love like the conversation that I was, so grateful to be involved in last year in Kairos, where we all got to know each other in the Healers Academy, and we had this incredible conversation, ongoing conversation, um, and learning it as programming that we all carry, right? It's not that I'm a terrible person. And for me before it was like, well, I'm not racist. And I hear so many people say this, well, I'm not racist. I don't do XYZ, but that person is, because look at what they just did, that horrible person. So there's this whole fear of like, if I admit to any of the things that just pop up, and they do, right? They just pop up. They automatically just like, oh my God, look, wow, that thought was there. And the gift of people being willing to say that out loud is that, like, for me it was an evolution to get to the point where I could believe my body had an experience of like, wow, those people aren't judging me and hating me because I just shared this story about myself doing this thing that I now see was like, oh my God, that was really like racial programming that I was just doing, microaggressions and things, and even bigger than that. So to be able to, like, that's why this is a judgment-free zone, right? Fully. This is a brave space. Like, we can't say what's safe for somebody else, right? But like cultivating bravery to be brave enough to say the things. Because we all have it. Just depends on where you're at with your awareness of it and your healing of it, right? So, oh my God, when I think back to some of the things, can I share a really pukey story right now
Oh, please do.
that I did? When I was in college, I literally went to a Halloween party as a fat black maid. That was my costume. That was funny at the time. That was in 1984, 85.
And everybody laughed. And
Everybody laughed. Oh, it was so funny, So it's in there, right? And yet I would have said I'm not a racist. I'm not racist. I'm not like Archie Bunker. I don't know if you guys ever saw All in the Family, right? Like he was a racist because he actually said things out loud, right? But, yeah. So,
It's funny too, because like that whole, what you said, like he's actually racist because he said things out loud. He's saying it out loud. What dropped him when you said that is like, wow, look at how honest he is, right? Like, right? Look at how honest, right? While the rest of us, so to speak, right? Like just keeps our mouth shut, thinks the thing, doesn't say the thing, right?
yeah.
Like, it's like that integrity, you know what I mean? Where it's like, someone recently said to me, like, it's like, I would trust a con man who names himself a con man more than the one that's pretending that he's not, right? And it's like that piece of, how, like saving face is like the word that's coming in, because I feel like that's a very like white cultural trope, right? To like kind of like have to save face, you know, like don't air the dirty laundry, don't like let anyone know, like we just have to like look like we're put together, and then everyone will just believe the farce of it, you know. And I feel like that's such a like a damaging like way to live. You know, like it's just like pretending that everything's okay,
Yep.
but then never actually building a capacity to sit with the discomfort of the not okayness.
Right.
You know, like
Yep.
yeah, like because we've talked about like the squirmy nature of this work. Like it's really uncomfortable, it's pukey, it's like you kind of want to run away, like, you know, that kind of piece. And so much of what we're doing as we step into this work is actually building our building our capacity to be with the discomfort of it all, to like have a regulated nervous system even as we're uncomfortable, right? Or as we're triggered, or at, you know, because like the instinct I think within whiteness is like, I don't feel comfortable, full stop, quit the conversation, turn the movie off, I'm done, right? Like, but that doesn't really get us anywhere.
No.
Yeah, and the
No, it's
denial.
just,
That's
yeah,
not me.
yeah. It becomes like a freeze state, right? Because even now, to share my experience, having shared the story I shared a few minutes ago, I'm fine. Right now, my mind's like, oh shit, okay, we won't include that in our recording. We'll cut that out. And oh my God, should I have said fat black man? Should, you know, and just all of that whole thing. I can just feel myself like getting more and more dissociated, actually. So it's a real nervous system phenomenon, right? Um, so yeah.
I so appreciate, Babs, that you are speaking truth to all of that, because
Mhm.
the whole reason you brought it up was because you were talking about this being a brave space,
Yeah.
and the power of having a year of witnessing people being in a space where they learned more and more to be brave, and that they did not get rejected, they did not get pushed out of the fold, they did not get ostracized or hated because of these things that we have been indoctrinated to believe and think and feel. And so I love that you shared that, and then also shared the backside of, oh my God, do we need to edit that part out? Like,
Uh-huh.
what are people
Yeah.
gonna think?
Yeah.
Because it was this beautiful modeling of that whole spectrum of the journey of what we're here to do, which is to let those things come to light. Because what is it, the shame can't hide in the light, like it
Right.
doesn't exist in the light, it can't, it is a dispelling of this old way of being. And we are here very intentionally to change the ways of being that are not in service to ourselves or each other. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, and that piece of like that fear of like getting kicked out of the community, right? Like, I
Yeah.
want to just really present how that is like a huge wounding, especially for those of us who have been raised white, right? Like that is the threat, right? Within whiteness, that is the major threat. You will be kicked out. You will not belong here anymore. You're not one of us. You're not, you're like them now, right? Like that is the fear that has kept all of us who can pass as white or who are included in whiteness, right? Like that's the bribe, right? Is like, do what we say and we will let you stay in this community. Even though the community is not exactly what we want, even though we don't love it, like, you know, like we are creatures of community. We are mammals. Like we need community. And so it's like, that's our lifeline, right? So no wonder we've been continuing on doing as we've been taught in fulfilling the programming, right? Because like that threat of like being left alone in the wilderness,
Mm-hmm.
like that's a death sentence back in the day. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like.
Yeah. And the other piece of that I'm just feeling myself very aware of as you're speaking, because yes, being shunned is its own thing, and there's the whole social acceptance piece, and we are relational creatures, right? So to be shunned, isolated, whatever, is like death. But also, I'm realizing that we also realize that if we're not part of this, if we're not accepted as like being in line with the white culture, we know that we're also at risk of being harmed by them, because there's been so much, we all know this, whether we admit it or not. We know how much harm people in white bodies have caused to people than non-white bodies. It's like, I can't, my words are getting jumbled, right? And for myself, you know, I can feel that in my body of like, I better stay at least acceptable enough that I'm not put in harm's way. You know, so it's like, and this is the white woman story, right? And that goes back to the victimhood piece, I think. In order for me to stay safe, I better stay allied with the people who are actually truly dangerous here.
Yeah.
While they're telling me that they're the ones that are dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So then we're programmed to believe that the people of color are dangerous, which my body took on. I know for sure. You know, I'd shared another story about that, about driving through Harlem one time when I was in college. And I, again, didn't think, I was like, I'm not a racist, but I was driving through Harlem by myself, found myself in Harlem. I was driving down the street. And then I happened to notice that on the street was all Black people. The reaction my body had was, you would have thought that they all had guns pointed at my head, because my body went into fight or flight. I was terrified, heart pounding, lock the door, you know, and they were just people going to the store and walking to work and walking home and walking with their kids. And yet my body had that kind of a reaction. So I was clearly taught that people of color, Black people, are a direct threat to me. I don't know. I mean, I can't point to how I was taught that other than history books and TV and movies and all the things, right? But I'm just really getting that right now. Like, that's another way that we perpetuate it all, by trying to keep ourselves safe, right?
I was just going to ask, Babs, where you were raised. It wasn't like the Deep South.
No, I was raised just outside of Boston, and as we all know, like, Boston's supposed to be, or fancies itself, this really progressive area. But I think most people of color will tell you that Boston is actually, and this is the thing, right? Super racist, but very underground, hidden on top of this like veneer of like, look how virtuous we are. We're like, you know, we were fought for the North, and we were, you know, cradle of liberty and all that stuff. But underneath, it's terribly racist, you know, but hidden. And that makes it even more toxic, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's funny, like, I lived in Louisiana, such a different vibe from growing up in Chicago. Like the how do I want to say, like, the palpability of the racism is just different. Like in the South, where like people were enslaved, right? Versus like in Chicago, where there was like a pretty strong labor movement, right? Like there was this perspective that like you paid laborers what they were worth. And so people acted accordingly, right? Like that labor history. And then like going to the South, where like there is no labor history, there's an enslavement history. It like just changes the cultural flavor is just so different. But what you said of the like racism hidden beneath this like polite veneer, I don't know, Babs, when we were reading My Grandmother's Hands, I don't know if we ever actually discussed it, but there's a chapter where Resma is essentially like inviting white people to really sit with the experience in their body of like what it is that white people would have had to do, right? Like the violence, right? And so he was specifically anchoring in lynching as like a practice in the early 1900s, late 1800s, where like folks were selling postcards, like people would collect like body parts and sell them, like sickening. And yet on a nervous system level, that was very normal for them. And one of the things that he brought up, because he's from Minnesota, and so, right, Minnesota, we think like, oh, it's Minnesota. But that in this particular year, early 1900s, more white people were lynched in this particular county than any other race of people. And it was this reminder of like, this threat of violence, right, is against all of us, right? Like, there isn't, like, we have this perception of like, I'll be safe if, right? But the reality is, like, no one is safe within this like super violent culture that doesn't value life, that like is threatened by anything that's different, right? And like, I sit with that sometimes of like, oof, like what would it take for me to feel normal with that kind of violence? But then I don't actually have to go that far, because then I put on Marvel movies and people are being exploded, or I put on like TV, you know, and there's this piece of like the it's not even a dehumanization, right? But it's like our like soft, like maybe it is like a disconnection from the heart, like our softening, right? Like coming out of the heart, we don't feel the pain as much of what we're doing. And so we can kind of be like, yeah, that sucks. Okay, let me go grocery shop. Oh, that sucks, but I got to pick my kid up from school. But to me, it feels like because we've survived it by leaving our heart space, because how do we survive this
Right.
when we're actually here? Like I think I told you guys about one of the books that I had read, where like thinking of like being the white woman whose husband is out terrorizing communities of color.
Mhm.
But I feel safer that he's doing that. And I feel safe with him when he comes home to me.
There was this piece that dropped in as you were saying that too, Kristen. I don't want to get too far away from where you were going with that, but just to add it in, is like, if he takes out his aggression elsewhere, he won't take it out on me.
Ooh. Ooh. Mm.
And I also think the way we survive that is to think that they, the ones who are being targeted, are somehow different than me.
Yes.
Mm.
They're not human, they're less than human, they're whatever, they deserve it,
Ooh.
or whatever, you know, like I think
Yeah.
about, they used to like, and in My Grandmother's Hands, Resma talks about like the programming started long, long ago for white people. It wasn't, right? It was like back in the medieval days where white skinned people were inflicting horrors on each other, right? So we carry the visceral awareness of people in white bodies being very, very scary beings. But you know, they used to go to executions, right? They'd bring the family, bring the kids, they'd watch the beheading. And the idea, I think, of like, well, they deserve it, they're a criminal, they're a horrible, you know, whatever, and we're going to watch it's justice or something, right? Like, so I think that's another way we survive it, is by thinking they are other
Yep.
and there's some justification for what's happening.
And I feel like, you know, the piece here that feels really poignant is like, all of this comes from the accepting, like, this is just how life is.
Yes.
Right? Like we've bought into this is just how life is. And so there's no other way of being. Because even like what you're saying of like bringing the kids to the execution, like of course I'm going to do that. They have to face the realities of life. They have to get used to the realities of life, right? Like that's kind of what we tell ourselves. But like, what if that's not the reality? You know, like that's the reality as we've created it. And so like, there's this piece of like, okay, how else do we want it to be? How else could it be? Like, what would it look like to not see myself as different from anyone?
I think that's such an important piece right now, is that what's coming through my mind is two things. It's this, sorry, I need to get him back. You know, sometimes when you start talking and then your brain's like, so, and I think that that's part of the defense mechanism as well. It's like, if I speak up what was really about to come out of my mouth, would that put me at risk, right? So it's, okay, this notion of, you can't like fix a broken system, and our system is so broken. It would take hundreds more years of deep intentional work to fix it and rid ourselves of all the toxicity that it is. What we can do is build a new way of being. And what I feel is so profound right now is that whether or not we are wanted to recognize it, it's happening. There is a global, massive evolution. The planet herself, people more and more are waking up. They are seeking a different way of being. And so it's not so much about fixing these broken systems, it's about creating this new world as we want it to be. And what I see happening, it's so easy, Babs, you were talking about the otherness. It's so easy to villainize the other people who don't get it, or what the hell is their problem, or they're the ones who are creating this. But in some way, we are all a reflection of each other. We all came to be here at this time together. And so, what if we stop seeing each other as other, and we were talking about the drama triangle, we stop making them the villains, making them the perpetrator, making us the righteous ones, and or needing a savior to come in. What if this is the time for us to step forward and say, hey, this is no longer working. We are building a new way of being. And we stop even seeing some of the greatest perpetrators that we would all say, the people who are those leaders you spoke to, who are the ones who are like making the shots, calling the shots and making the decisions, and that have this massive impact. What if we let ourselves honor that they are serving a purpose of bringing to light the horrific nature of the way that we have been living and what we've been tolerating, so we can see it more clearly, honor that it needs healing. It's being asked for healing right now, and we can start to take steps to make that the reality of the healed culture, the healed way of being together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, what I feel like is so important for that too, right, is like something that we've all talked about before as well, right, is stepping out of that dynamic of like the victim, perpetrator, savior, right, and into like sovereignty, right, like into our full power, right? Because I know for myself, right, like, you know, I had my consciousness awaken very early to the ways I was like embodying like racist mentality. I'll just share one of mine. So in high school, the first person I loved, he was a Black man, and I was in American history, and we'd spent like a really long time learning about slavery. Understandable, we need to, right? And then we spent one day learning about the women's movement in the United States. And I was pissed. I was like, we spent all this time learning about slavery. Blah, 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 blah. That happened so long ago. I cannot believe it. Like, what about women? What about women? Right? And my boyfriend was kind of like, okay, I have a show that I think we should watch together. And then we proceeded to watch every episode of the original Roots. And let me say that I did not ever say that again, as far as like, that happened so long ago. Why are we still talking about this? This is over and done with, right? Because then I actually sat with the reality, like the visceral reality, right? Like, because there's something different about reading and then, or having someone tell you, and then watching players play out the horrors. And so that was my moment of like, oh, damn, right? Like, I actually haven't been holding how big this is, like how much this has shaped us, how much this is harming us. Like, wow, right? And that changed everything. Like that moment, like changed like my trajectory for life. And there is a part of me, right, that went into learning about systems of oppression and all of these different systems, right, that have been designed to, you know, oppress us, keep us in line, right? And it was so easy to fall into that same drama triangle with the system of oppression is the perpetrator, and I'm this victim who's been victimized by these systems, and we need this savior to come and save us from these systems, or maybe I'll be the savior to save us from these systems. And it's like, that just keeps us in this same drama triangle, right? Like, and like you said, like, okay, where can I step back and see that these systems for a reason that my human brain cannot comprehend, had a purpose. They were purposely put in place, like, you know, God's plan, whatever that is, to bring us to a point where what we can liberate ourselves, where we can feel free, you know, where we as all powerful beings wanted to experience what it felt like to not be powerful, you know, that. And so I feel like I've been grappling in that space recently because it was so much more comfortable for me to stay in the, like, we have to fight against these horrible oppressive systems. And it's like, wait a second, doesn't that put me in the same position of like having to destroy something and like fight against some evil and not in love and not in compassion and othering, because they are the enforcers of the system, you know, those baddies. And it's like, okay, girl.
Do you think that like that's like where a lot of activism actually is, right? Where it actually lives is drama triangle.
That's why I had to leave it, you know, because like I found healing through activism, right? Like it was through being in activism for a while and being in nonprofit work and being in community organizing and then seeing the wounding, right? Hurt people that just kept perpetuating itself. Mm-hmm. And I had that realization, like, if I don't heal my shit, I'm going to be that leader, that egotistical leader who's hurting everyone. Meanwhile, I'm like, got this perspective. I'm the savior. Look at all the good stuff I did. Meanwhile, I'm like shitty to like all these people, right? Like, I didn't want to be that person. And yet I saw myself on the way there if I didn't heal.
Yep.
Because the ego, you know, just loves saving, loves feeling powerful and righteous.
And if you're in that othering mentality, right, then you stay locked into that. They're the bag, and there's a lot of energy in that. I mean, look at sports. Look at how big sports are in our culture, right? Like, the Yankees suck. Like,
it's just a game.
What's that?
They say it's just a game.
It's just a game, but yet people get beat up and cars get torched after World Series thing, right? And so even though it seems righteous, I think about like that horrible march down in was it in Charlotte or Charlottesville, right? Where the Proud Boys with their chinos and their polo shirts and their torches and, you know, just, you know, there's part of me that wants to go out and fight against them, right? Like, and that would want it. I mean, not that I would do this, I don't think, because my own nervous system probably wouldn't let me confront somebody who's dangerous in that way, but would want to be in their face yelling and screaming. And you see so much of that, right? You see, and depending on which side you're on, you might be like, that one yelled louder, so he won, yay, and that one said the better things. But it doesn't help anything. It's just more of the same that just keeps happening, right? So, you know, even going back to that story about the blanket training, hearing that story, like the result of it for me, but first I was just thinking about the children, you know, when they're in their development and that's what their experience is, and knowing as a healer, the impact on them, right? Losing all self agency and self-image and losing self, right? But it also, what it did is it gave me such deep compassion for what we see so much of now, like what Christianity seems to have become, you know, which is not anything that my understanding of Christ has to do with, right? Christ was all about love, right? Love, 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 love. Now, what I see in Christianity, there's a lot of not love. But now I kind of get a sense for like, oh my God, imagine if you grew up as one of those children that's been beaten since they were 4 months old to not move outside the box, and you've been taught, you know, you have to be this way or else. And so you are like, and it comes from a place again of well-intentionality. Like, well, this is how I need to live my life. This is how a good person lives. This is what I'm going to do. So they're just saying the things and doing the things. So when
Well,
I think
and
of it from that perspective, it softens me a whole lot. And I don't want to yell and scream at them and tell them what a horrible person they are. My healer's heart wants to be like, oh, just like, can I get my heart even bigger and softer in the face of being with this judgment? So yeah.
well, and what was coming up too while you're saying that, Babs, is like, in their perspective, it is coming from love. Like this, because like I think of,
Right.
Like what you're kind of speaking to, right? Like this hyper vigilance to like act a particular way that has become really synonymous with like Christianity, right? Like this is how a good Christian acts, right? Like in many ways, right? Like that perspective of like, let me show you how to be good is coming from a place of love, right? Like I think of like my
Right,
aunt,
right.
one of my aunts when I was a kid, right, who was teaching me about fashion, right? And she had all of these rules that like I have now grown out of, right? But she had rules about like wearing navy blue and brown or black together, right? And she had rules about like how to do your makeup and like when did, and like for her, like she was teaching me how to be a woman, right? Like doing my eyebrows, doing my makeup and doing all these things, right? That was coming from love, right? Like she was like, I wish I had someone who could have shown me these things when I was your age, right? Like I had to learn all this the hard way, right?
Yeah.
But like in some ways, right? Like that didn't, it felt very constricting, right? Like I ended up being scared that I was going to do it wrong, right? Like I ended up spending a lot of time focusing on like doing it right, because like God forbid I accidentally wear navy blue and black together, like, and it's like it doesn't matter, but like, my young self when she was teaching me that, like it mattered, like because I wanted to belong. I wanted to
Yeah.
be seen as a woman. I wanted, whatever it was. And so like I do think there's that piece of like it's so easy for me to create this evil narrative about people who are different from me, right? Again, I've brought this up like whole Pocahontas. They're different from me, which means they must be evil. Like that is such a part of our culture, but like they're just the same as me. They're actually just the same as me. Like,
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and I was just thinking, like, love, when you insert a whole lot of fear into love, then it becomes a thing, right? Like it becomes a very dangerous thing. If it
Mm.
starts from a place of love, of parents caring about their children and loving their children, and what they're taught is a whole lot of fear. If they do this, then this will happen, and we won't even talk about the concept of original sin, because that's another thing. If you
Look,
believe that they're inherently bad, then that's a whole other thing. But yeah, if you take that level of love and then start to insert a lot of fear into it, they're trying to hurt you. They'll do this. They'll do that. They'll do that. And then yeah, then all these acts become justified, seemingly, right?
when it feels like
Mm.
where we're coming out of like the dark ages, like you talked about, Clarissa, right? Where like that was our pattern in the past because we were living in a dark time, right? Like, it's like how we act in winter is different than how we act in summer. And so now we're like coming out, but we forgot, we're having to relearn. And I feel like that's why it's so difficult, right? Is because we're literally in the transition period of like having to shed the patterns that aren't working and then rewrite patterns, which is literally the hardest part of like the stages of change, right? Is like the is like that pivot. It's like once we get the grooves of like unconditional love, it's like, oh wow, unconditional love feels so easy. But like I don't think we have that many examples of unconditional love in our current paradigm.
yeah, and I think we get ourselves into danger sometimes as healers because it's so easy to go, well, I don't want that. I'm going to just be love and light.
Oof.
And
Right.
like, yes, ultimately that's where it is. That's what it is. But but we're in this dense 3D reality where we're navigating, like, if we say we're going to be love and light, and that's going to change everything, but underneath it are these deep layers of indoctrinated, embodied fear and terror and otherness, then the love and light does not have the power and the potency that it actually is here to bring through, right? And so what we get to do is not this whitewashing spiritual bypass of, I'm just going to be love and light and all of the problems will go away, they will dissipate. What we get to do is have a space where we can look really deeply, really compassionately, really lovingly and tenderly at the wounds that are deeply embodied, that have been taken in and breathed in, that create our reality. And we get to start to examine and pick apart this stuff so that we can begin to breathe air that is clean. Like when we breathe it in, it gets transmuted. And this is a metaphor, right? But it also is a very literal thing. It comes back out as clean air in service to all. So, as I expect, a lot of our listeners, a lot of our audience will be people who are in this boat with us of seeking the new and sensing into the new, and bringing spirituality into their lives in a new way, that it has a power to transform their lives and our collective. Also, just honoring that a stage in that also might be the bypass mode of more of that, of otherness, of, I'm just going to be love and light and that will transform. And yes, that's ultimately where we're headed. And right now is the time, as we're moving through these layers of transition you spoke about, Kristen, where we are getting to look compassionately at the wounding that's there so we can tend to it and actually bring healing that creates a new way of being.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well said.
Mm-hmm.
I'm noticing the time as well. I know as part of this, we wanted to bring in some body work or healing, or some healing modality for us as we are all processing this together, so that it's not just we're here to talk about a bunch of stuff and then leave all of us in a state of, well, what do I do with that? Is anyone feeling a call to do any sort of work to contribute to this conversation in service of moving these energies?
Whew. Well, I felt like a coughing fit come on right when you were saying that. So I feel like that's some stuff clearing out there. So I guess I'll just like invite us maybe to move our bodies a little bit, right? Like the three of us have said a lot. We've anchored in a lot of different things here, and all of us are probably feeling different things in our bodies as a result. So I'll just invite us to just move, shake, touch, sway. And maybe just let yourself take some breath here and really honoring the exhale. Letting yourself just release. There's so much that we have been carrying consciously and unconsciously for generations that we just frankly don't need to carry anymore. Things that no longer hold promise for the future, for the children, things that are no longer keeping us safe, things that are no longer making us feel secure and good. And so we can just imagine that those things are just starting to detach, effortlessly falling away. And as those things fall away, I'll just invite in that pure unconditional love to just start moving around our field. And as we feel ready, we can imagine we're breathing that love in, inviting it in to our bodies, just becoming attuned to this energy again. Not needing to change, not needing to be changed, just letting ourselves come back into relationship with this unconditional love that we are. And maybe feeling that love begin to circle around and infuse our genetics, our inheritancy, our bloodline, and just feeling just love being woven in to our ancestry, to the codes, the genetic building blocks that make us, feeling that love has always been there. And just allowing it to come back online, allowing ourselves to attune to the frequency of it. And with that love, just fully attuning our being. I'll just invite you to imagine that any residual energy that wants to be let go can just fall away into the earth, trusting that what we let go becomes the fodder for new growth. And also just allowing this love that has been working in your field and attuning your genetics, just letting some of that trickle down into the earth as well. Feeling the place that you occupy on this planet, just beginning to resonate with that unconditional love once again. Feeling the very fabric of this reality alter as this unconditional love is anchored fully into your body and the body of the earth, here and now. I feel complete with that. If there's anything y'all want to add.
I just want to bring in gratitude for this conversation, for each of you, and for anyone listening or participating. I feel really grateful to be able to have these conversations and to bring that energy of non-judgment and it just feels really, really powerful and important. And I feel honored to be able to be doing this. So just giving gratitude to each of you, to everybody listening, and to Source and to the organizing principle behind the scenes that's guiding all of this. Just deep, deep gratitude.
And I feel complete as well. So I'll just bring everyone back, inviting us all to take one more deep breath in, very consciously, aware of the feeling as it moves through our noses, holding it at the top for a moment, and releasing. And as you're ready, coming back into your space, letting your eyes flutter open, noticing the space around you, the feeling of being in your body, the feeling of gratitude for this work. I just wanted to honor Kristen for bringing in that unconditional love, because that is what we're headed. And so inviting us to attune to that feels so incredibly potent. And yes, there is this deeper work to do, but that's like eye on the prize, right? The North Star of where we're headed. And so letting ourselves start to feel into what that feels like in our body feels really powerful, because it's there is so much false separation that we talked about through this call that's been taught and trained into us, that has us be like, well, I am not that. That is not me. I'm not that pure. Or maybe I am that pure, but they're not that pure. And so the more we start to resonate on that level of unconditional love, the more we can see where those untruths are and start to dismantle those beliefs that has us be separate and has us all our projection of the other be separate from that unconditional love. So thank you. That feels like such a beautiful way to have wrapped this up. And I just invite us to continue to play with that energy and bring that in. And anytime we have that trigger of like, oh God, I can't, or oh, I can't believe they, or any of that otherness within ourselves or without ourselves, to bring in that energy of unconditional love and just see what it wants to offer us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.